Hello, everyone. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the kickoff session of the OneSocket Initiative. The OneSocket Initiative is being brought to you by the Watch Coalition, also known as the OneSocket Alliance to Champion Hope. Our mission at the Watch Coalition is to transform the city of Woonsocket into a safe, vibrant, and unified community by promoting social equity, building a cohesive multicultural community, and by building and nurturing intergenerational leadership. The OneSocket initiative was actually sparked by community members. We had done participatory budgeting with OneSocket residents and asked them if they could think of projects that would have a positive impact on the community. And then through a democratic process, they voted on which project ideas they thought would have the greatest impact. And so that gave rise to what became the OneSocket initiative. The OneSocket initiative has three components to it: get powered on, get charged up, and get plugged in. Getting powered on is all about strengthening local infrastructure and building our capacity to continue doing good work in the city of Woonsocket. Getting charged up is all about empowering residents with the information that they need to have a positive impact on their own lives and on the community. And getting plugged in is all about connecting residents to local resources and services. Most of you might have already registered, but you can continue to register for the different elements of the OneSocket initiative at that link on their screen or at the QR code tiny.cc/OneSocket. Today, we are starting with getting charged up through civic education. We recognize that a lot of people might have the feeling that politics doesn't really matter, that as long as you continue to focus on your own life and you work hard and you take care of yourself and your family, that everything should be fine and politics don't matter. The reality is that even if you don't do politics, politics will do you. So we wanted to make sure that everyone, especially Woonsocket residents, have the tools, the resources, and the information that you need to know to be informed and aware of the different levels of government, how they affect you, and how you can get involved. We're really proud to do this series in partnership with our friends at Rebuild Woonsocket. The mission at Rebuild is to work towards an equitable, just, and vibrant community and a livable future by building a people-powered, community-oriented movement and transforming Woonsocket politics so the city puts the needs of working-class people first. So together, we are here today to learn more specifically about the federal level of government. So we're really excited to introduce to you our presenter for today, Vimala Phongsavanh, who is a lifelong Woonsocket resident and a political organizer. So without further ado, Vimala, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Wando. And I'm just going to share my screen. So first of all, thank you to Alex and Wando for having me here and the Watch Coalition for your 5-year anniversary. Really proud to have been there at the beginning and be here doing this work today. And both all three of us go way back, and so it's nice to always come back here together. So just about I was asked by the Watch Coalition to do a presentation on the federal government. I'll go quickly over myself and then just a little background on me, and then dive into the different parts of the federal government. I think a really good topic today to focus on are executive orders. And then, what are the things we can do in this moment? And then, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So just a little presentation on me. Oops, sorry. Oh, okay. Just clicked it. That's all it took. So I currently serve as a managing director of Coalition Mobilization at National Capacity, which stands for Coalition for Asian Pacific Americans and Community Development. My background is I started my career as an AmeriCorps Vista in Chinatown, Boston. Did organizing work in Rhode Island, Southeast Asian community, and as Wando said, born, raised, educated in Woonsocket, a current resident. I have over 15 years of experience specializing in policy advocacy and electoral politics. Some of the key areas I've worked on are reproductive freedom, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander justice work, voting rights, data equity, and ballot initiatives. And some of my background, previous roles have been at the Congressional Progressive Caucus Center, Planned Parenthood Votes Rhode Island, Common Cause Rhode Island, and was the former chairwoman of the Woonsocket School Committee. A little bit about me, just really excited to be here and love when things happen at the local level. So I will dive straight into the federal government. As I mentioned, we'll go over the branches of government, executive orders, what we can do, and then a Q&A at the end. So, what are the three branches of government? There's a constitution that states that these are the three branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch. The legislative branch, they have powers by given to them by the Article 1 of the Constitution. They have power to make laws and sets funds for the government. And who is in the legislative branch of Congress? And that's the Senate and the House of Representatives. The United States Senate has 100 members, two from each state, and they must be 30 years old to run. Our two United States senators in Rhode Island are Senator Jack Reed and Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. So both of these folks are your represent you in the United States Senate. The United States House of Representatives, a little bit different, has 435 members, at least one representative from each state, and they must be 25 years old to run. Uh, in Rhode Island, we have Representative Gabe Amo, who represents House District 1, and this is Woonsocket's representative. Um, and then there's Representative Seth Magaziner from House District 2, and he represents a different part of Rhode Island. So moving on to the executive branch, this branch is from Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution. They make sure that laws are obeyed. The president is the head of the executive branch. And they have the president has the power to issue executive orders. The president gets help from the vice president, department heads or cabinet members, and independent agencies. And then there's a judicial branch. So the powers that they have, they're the country's court system, decides the meanings of laws. They decide how laws are applied. They decide if laws break the rules. We have the Supreme Court here in the United States, which is the highest court in the United States. It's made up of 9 justices. There is one Chief Justice. The Supreme Court justices are appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and justices have their jobs for life. So this is an old graphic that was used at the last Watch Coalition presentation that we did. So just so you understand the way our branches of government work in relation to each other, you have the executive branch, which enforces laws, the legislative branch writes laws, judicial branch upholds federal laws, federal and state laws, and let me get to the notes that I have. If there are any questions, I'll take them now. But I'm just reviewing the chat. So I thought it might be helpful today to review executive orders. Since I think that has been one of the main avenues that the Trump administration is using for their policy making. So what is an executive order and how is it different from a law? So executive orders, the president issues executive orders to direct government actions under their constitutional authority. Orders cannot override federal laws. They guide how existing laws are enforced. Laws are passed by Congress, signed by the president, and cannot be changed by executive order. So an example of how an executive order would work is if Congress legalizes or criminalizes a drug. The president can then use an executive order to set enforcement priorities on that law. There are some limits in impact and historical use of executive orders. Um, we said, some of the limits are they can't override the Constitution or federal laws. They can be reversed by Congress, courts, or future presidents. There's been some historical use. Some have been positive and some have been negative. Some of the positive have been Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, which freed slaves. There was Truman's military integration, which was Executive Order 9981, and that was to desegregate the United States military. There have been a lot of negative executive orders as well. One notable one is Roosevelt's Japanese American internment. And this authorized the forced removal and internment of Japanese Americans to internment camps. Um, and we've seen in just the first, 100 days of the Trump administration that he's willing to use a lot of executive orders to cause a lot of harm in our communities. We'll go over the full list in the next slide, but some of the things that have been that executive orders have been used for so far has been to rescind civil rights protections, roll back DEI efforts. He's challenging birthright citizenship. And so, that is a lot of concerning information that we've been getting. And here's a full list of, or not a full list. This is just some of the things that he's used executive orders for. There's the destruction of civil society. There's been mass civil servant firings, firing of the inspector generals, halting anti-bribery laws, terminating DEI programs, the federal funding freeze, withdrawing from the World Health Organization or WHO, pardoning January 6th insurrectionists, immigration executive orders, birthright citizenship, the travel bans, deportation and enforcement, student visas, naturalization, citizenship, declaring English as a national language, some civil rights issues, First Amendment rights, voting rights, data privacy, housing and economic justice, the dismantling of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, which were consumer protections and things like protecting overdraft fees, and credit cards. There's Small Business Administration, and the CDFIs, and that's, a lot of folks get access to capital through those avenues. Education, dismantling of the Department of Education, student and faculty censorship at colleges and universities, student loan debt, health, affordability, restrictions on the National Institute of Health, NIH, which had really great cancer research programs that have now been canceled, threats to Medicaid, community health data. So, the next slide is going to show just the number of executive orders in comparison to some other to the previous presidents in their first 100 days. So as you can see, these are executive orders that have been issued so far, and it's not even the first 100 days yet, and there have been 98. And compared to his last administration, which was 33. And so there are ways to, fight against some of these executive orders, and we're seeing them take action in the courts. This chart shows some of the executive orders that have been challenged and their current status. So ending birthright citizenship is temporarily blocked. Ending government DEI efforts have been partially or temporarily blocked. Ending federal support for gender affirming care is temporarily blocked. Banning transgender people from serving in the military, temporarily blocked. So, there are a lot of cases that are going down right now in the courts. But I think our next slide is really about the anxiety and fear in America today, after hearing all of those executive orders, many people in America are experiencing a heightened anxiety due to the political policies and rhetoric that are floating around. Um, Immigrants are under attack. There's anxiety over deportation, family separation, and asylum restrictions. People of color, concerns over discrimination, policing policies, and voter suppression. LGBTQ plus individuals, a fear of losing their rights like marriage, healthcare, workplace protections. There's been a lot of job losses. There's been federal employees, folks that work at nonprofits. There's companies downsizing. There's a lot of industry shifting, and unstable employment. There's rising costs, inflation, making essentials like food, rent, healthcare unaffordable. And with so many firings, there's a lack of government support. There's struggles with wages, benefits, and economic stability. So that's a lot of bad news. But I showed this slide, which I actually have never seen the Fellowship of the Ring or any of that series, but I think this quote is really helpful to kind of set us and ground us in the moment that we're living in. So it's, "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us." So I mean, I summarize it as, we don't really get to choose the times that we live in, but we do get to choose how we rise to meet them. These are not normal times. The institutions that once upheld stability and democracy are under attack from within. The rule of law, which once seemed unshakable, is now being tested, bent, and in some cases outright ignored. What was once considered extreme or unthinkable is now daily news. Um, and we're seeing a constitutional crisis unfolding. Checks and balances are being eroded, with power consolidating in ways that undermine our democracy. The integrity of our elections, the judiciary, and their free press are being called into question. Political norms that guided our governance for generations are being shattered. Uh, the dismantling of government as we know it, and we're watching it. Institutions that were meant to serve and protect people are being gutted, leaving communities vulnerable. Laws are being rewritten or ignored to serve the interests of a few billionaires over the people. Public trust in government is at an all-time low, creating space for authoritarian impulses to take hold. Um, and this is going to be really hard. It's going to be tragic. It's going to be painful. People will suffer if they haven't already, through the loss of rights, economic instability, and outright violence. Marginalized communities, as always, will bear the brunt of these times. And the fear and uncertainty of this moment can feel overwhelming. But we can't look away, as Wando mentioned at the top of the call, because on the other side of all this is an opportunity to build something new. Moments of collapse create openings for transformation. We have a chance to rethink and rebuild systems that were never truly just to begin with. And if we stay engaged, resist despair, and organize, we can create a world rooted in equity, justice, and sustainability. Um, so I don't believe, folks believe this is the end. And I think this is, the fight before the rebirth. And so I'm excited to also see what that rebirth will look like. And it's going to require all of us. And so just, what can we do? Um, we've got to build communities. We've got to connect with like-minded individuals, support each other, and create safe spaces. Join mutual aid networks, providing direct support through things like resource sharing, community kitchens, housing assistance, and more. If it's safe to show up, attend rallies, protests, and demonstrations to make your voices heard, meet with elected officials, hold leaders accountable, demand action, and push for policies that reflect community needs. Engage at the local and state levels. More impactful change does often happen in local governments. So advocate, vote, organize at the local level. Stay hopeful and resilient. Change takes time. Staying engaged and optimistic does fuel progress. Know your rights. I think this is one of the most important things we could be doing right now is educating ourselves and others on legal protections and how to navigate interactions with law enforcement, especially if, we um, run into ICE. Like we have to know what to do in those situations if our community members are faced with these interactions, how do we protect each other? And traveling, do folks know, the risks that we're facing while we travel now? Protecting vulnerable communities, showing solidarity, amplifying marginalized voices, and standing against injustice, supporting independent and ethical media. Um, we have to stay informed and help spread truthful, well-researched information. There's a lot of disinformation out there, and folks are getting information in so many different ways, and we have to make sure that at the minimum, the folks, our friends, our close allies, our close circles are getting accurate information. Um, and using all the skills you have for change, whether it's art, writing, legal expertise, tech, or organizing. Everyone does have a role to play in this, and there's a lot of different ways that you can plug in. Especially in Woonsocket, there are a lot of folks who are organizing different events to different policy issues. And so there's a lot of places to plug in. You're not alone. There are a lot of organizations in Rhode Island already that do a lot of policy advocacy work, work on issues that you might care about, whether it's, civil rights issues, which the ACLU of Rhode Island does a good job with advocating at the state house and at the local community level. Democracy, there are groups like Common Cause that work on those issues. There's climate group, plenty of climate groups that are doing really good work out there. Labor organizing. There are lots of Rhode Island's a very active labor state, so there's always ways to engage. And even right now with Woonsocket advocacy, the Watch Coalition, Rebuild Woonsocket. There are also some other groups out there. I haven't stayed too in the loop, but I know there's a lot of good stuff going on and good people that are willing to create some change even at the very local level. So that's my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions, but happy to take them, and I'm gonna stop sharing now.
So Vimala, we do have some questions that were coming in the chat. One was the question about executive orders and how that compares to the system of checks and balances. So how can a president issue executive orders where we have the system of checks and balances?
Yeah, so there is the system of the checks and balances with executive orders. So as I mentioned before, the president can issue executive orders, but there are folks who can override that. So it could be reversed by Congress, the courts, or future presidents. And we saw with Trump with him reversing a lot of the executive orders that the Biden administration put forth, especially towards climate work, like the IRA, a lot of the components there. He just kind of got rid of all those, all that progress that was made in that administration. And then Michael Riando, does any of this really matter if a significant political party can just ignore all of this? I think that goes back to just that, these aren't normal times. And just my analysis is that I think a lot of others is just there's not a really strong opposition party. You're seeing a lot of disarray in the Democratic Party itself too. And so, it makes it feel like there's not a lot we can do, but as I mentioned, it's really important to do and make change at the local levels. Um, and you can join the local political parties. I think some folks are familiar with like there's like the Woonsocket Democratic Party. If you want to change it at the local level, there are groups and committees that folks can join. And I think Alex and Wanda will have a great list with how you can make changes with political parties within political parties. How can people stay up to date with policy changes and executive orders coming from the federal level? It is a lot. It's a lot of information. And it's it's thrown at us in so many different ways. But I think the best way I keep up is following like I said, like following groups um that are already doing this work, like groups like ACLU are keeping track of that. There are a lot of folks in the policy world at the national levels that are keeping track of this. So I think it's either, trying to find the right listserv or email lists or group that you really trust with information. Um, but there is a Federal Register page that has a list of all the executive orders. Um, that it'll link you straight to the executive orders, but there are lots of groups that summarize that language too, because a lot of it can be jargony and it can be overwhelming when you access that database. Um, we recently were told our FEMA money was not going to be awarded next year. Where do we fight, especially population of? That's a really good question, and I think I heard a similar thing about FEMA, and the dismantling of FEMA. Um,
All right,
especially,
before you move forward with answering it, I just want to make sure everybody heard what the question is or saw what the question is. So we recently were told FEMA money was not going to be awarded next year. Where do we fight for this, especially with the population of hungry folks that we feed every day?
yeah, I think the fight will be with your member of Congress, and we have four really good members that if you're able to connect with them, I think that might be the best way to make sure that these issues are being heard. But I think, there's so much uncertainty with everything too. We don't know if this will be something that will be challenged in the courts. But another avenue that I know folks have already kind of been building out is the mutual aid work and community level work of being able to build these networks out for folks if there is no funding, which is, it's really sad to hear and actually, have to live through and be. I know folks do a lot of work here on mutual aid, and so your work's just going to be that much more important. And but I would first, if you're going to talk to someone, it would be your members of Congress, the other state level, like state reps, state senators, if they have access to funding through their grants, through their legislative grants, if they, rise up to the level of the Speaker of the House. State funding's another avenue, although they're struggling too. I don't have a really good answer except to reach out to your elected officials and then also strengthen that mutual aid network. Anything else, Wando or Alex?
I don't see any more questions now, so just a call out and for any of the folks who are watching, if you have any additional questions, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure that we share your questions here in the Zoom. So we'll pause for another moment to allow people to ask any remaining questions. It looks to me like you might have answered all of the questions. So we will start to wrap things up. So thank you so much, Vimala, for this information that you've shared with us today. You really reminded us that it might feel really dark right now, might feel really doom and gloom, but there are some very specific, concrete things that we all can do to navigate this moment. And like you said, we can't necessarily control what times we get, but we can control what we do in those times. And so we can organize, we can make sure that we are educating ourselves on civic education and that we're taking care of each other through mutual aid. But again, really importantly, that we are organizing. I actually did just see another question come in. This one is specific to the Department of Education. I don't know if you'd be able to answer to this one, but how can our schools survive without the Department of Education?
I I don't know. I mean, I don't think I can answer that, but I think yeah, that's another one that's just gonna hurt, disabled folks and low income communities and I really don't know the answers to these. These are just really tough questions and times. But yeah, sorry I couldn't answer that one. I don't know if anyone else knows the answer.
I think that's something that we are going to have to look into and figure out, and we can come back and share that information publicly of what we find about how schools are going to be able to navigate education without the Department of Education. So far, I know it's been quite tough. I've been hearing about a lot of people obviously losing their jobs who were working at the Department of Education or who were working with programs that were funded by the Department of Education. So that's going to be something that might be quite a big hit to schools, especially those that relied on a lot of federal funding to fund the schools.
Yeah,
So we're gonna do some learning more about that to be able to provide a more
and
specific answer to
Wanda,
that question.
yeah, that's a really good question. And what I just wanted to add was it might not be under the Department of Education, right? It might just be under a different like a different department that they put it in. And there's been talks, at least with the student loans, that it would go under the Small Business Administration. But again, it's going to be really hard to do a lot of this work if there's no one to do it. So there might be just significant delays and in doing the programming that they've always done.
All right, I'm gonna do another check-in again to see if there are any additional questions coming in. So we'll pause for a second and allow folks time to ask any additional questions they might have. All right, I don't see any additional questions. So I think it's safe to move on. But again, for those of you who are watching, if you do have additional questions that we aren't able to answer here today, we will work on getting you an answer. So we do want to follow up with everybody and make sure that people feel like they got what they needed out of this. But I want to say thank you again to Vimala for sharing once again with us her wealth of knowledge about the federal level of government. And before we close things out, I do just want to remind everybody of some what we have next on the horizon. So give me one second. All right. So again, thank you so much, Vimala, for your presentation today. I want to remind everybody of what is coming next. So this is just one part of a series of trainings that we're doing on the different levels of government and how they impact us. So the next training is going to be on the state level of government. It's called Whose House? Our House. And we have Nina Harrison, who is the policy director at the Economic Progress Institute, who's going to join us to give us the inner workings of state government and share with us some important bills that are being heard at the General Assembly at the state level. So please join us for that next workshop in this series. If you haven't registered for it yet, please go ahead and do so. It's going to be on Wednesday, April 2nd at 6 p.m. You can scan that QR code or go to tiny.cc/OneSocket to register for that next workshop or for any of the other workshops in the Get Charged Up series. But at this point, we just want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again, Vimala, for presenting to us. And we want to invite you all to stay connected with us at the Watch Coalition and at Rebuild OneSocket. Like Vimala said, one of the things that we can do to navigate this moment in time is to make sure that we are organizing, that we're connecting with each other, that we're engaged in mutual aid, and that we're building out our own local levels of support. So one of the ways that you can do that is by joining our community, joining our village here at the Watch Coalition. So get in touch with us. All of our social media and our contact info is listed right there, or you can check out our website on Linktree at Linktree/Watch Coalition to learn more about us. But we hope that you stick around for the remainder of this series. So again, Wednesday, April 2nd is going to be the next workshop. And we have a few more workshops after that that are going to be on local governance in the city of Woonsocket, about advocacy, and about building your social action toolkit. And then we'll roll into the next phase of the OneSocket initiative, which is going beyond civic education. We're going to jump into health and personal wellness next. So stay with us, stay connected to us, and we hope that you all join our village. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And without further ado, we are going to wrap. So thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody.